The knife clinked against her wine glass just as she leaned closer to him, smiling like I wasn't even there. "Stop, Zach," she giggled, her voice soft and breathy, that exact tone she once used only for me. He said something back that I couldn't hear over the low jazz playing in the background, but it didn't matter. She laughed again, louder this time. That's when I realized I was chewing on the inside of my cheek, tasting copper. My name was on the reservation. My card was on the bill. But I wasn't in the room anymore. Not really. I watched her sit across from me like I was some acquaintance who got invited by accident. Her eyes sparkled when they looked at him. When they drifted back to me, they just dimmed. The waiter came by with a smile and asked, "Anything else for the table?" I said no. Politely. Too politely, probably. Then I slid my card into his hand. "Oh, Gerald, you don't have to," she started, finally noticing me again. "I know," I said, forcing a smile that didn't belong to me. The receipt came. I signed it. Left a good tip because the waiter wasn't the one who betrayed me. Then I stood. She blinked. "Where are you going?" I shrugged. "Bathroom." But I didn't go to the bathroom. I walked straight out the front door. Didn't look back. Didn't even pretend to tie my shoe or check my phone. The cold hit me like a slap, and I welcomed it. At least it was honest. By the time I got to the car, I was shaking. Not from the weather, from the crack spreading through my ribs like ice in a glass. She didn't follow. 10 minutes later, still sitting in the parking lot, my phone lit up. "Darlene." "Seriously? Are you actually being dramatic right now?" That was it. "No, where are you?" "No, I'm sorry." Just that. I stared at the message for a full minute before locking the screen. When I got home, I went straight to the kitchen. I didn't turn the lights on. Just opened the fridge, closed it again, and leaned against the counter like it could hold me together. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even pour a drink. Instead, I walked to the bedroom, opened her nightstand drawer, the one I hadn't touched in months, and found what I didn't know I'd been looking for. A hotel key card. Room 318. The logo read Fairmont East Side. It wasn't from tonight. It was from before. Worn edges. Creased corner. She'd kept it. In her drawer. Next to her favorite hand cream. Like it was a memory she wanted close. And I? I stood there like a statue, holding that tiny piece of plastic, realizing the dinner wasn't the betrayal. It was just the performance. The real betrayal had happened long before tonight. And I just funded the encore. I didn't sleep that night. Not a minute. I just sat there in the armchair by the window, holding that hotel key card between my thumb and forefinger like it was radioactive. Room 318. Fairmont East Side. That was a business hotel. Upscale but bland. The kind where things aren't meant to be remembered. But she kept this. Which means she remembered something. I had no plan. No anger-fueled revenge fantasy. Just a sick, gnawing need to know. To confirm what my gut already screamed, even if it meant tearing my chest open to do it. By 7:20 a.m., I was pulling into the hotel's parking garage, still wearing the same clothes from last night. I don't know what I thought would happen. I half expected security to stop me, or for the desk clerk to ask questions. But no one looked twice. They never do. I walked up to the front desk with a numb calm and said I had left something in room 318 2 days ago. The clerk, a young woman who looked like she had just graduated high school, tapped on her keyboard like this was the most normal request in the world. Then she smiled and handed me a replacement key. No ID check. No raised eyebrow. I rode the elevator up in silence. My hands trembled, but the rest of me felt dead. The hallway smelled like carpet cleaner and loneliness. When I slid the key card into the lock, there was a tiny green flash and a soft click. The room looked exactly as I expected, impersonal, sterile. The bed was made. The lights off. The blinds drawn. But I wasn't there for the decor. I started checking the trash bin. Nothing. The drawers. Nothing. I even lifted the mattress. Just air. Then I saw it. On the desk by the lamp, under the notepad bearing the Fairmont logo, was a folded receipt. I unfolded it with slow fingers, and the air left my lungs when I saw her name at the bottom. Darlene H. Guest. Check-in date. 2 weeks ago. Check-out. Same day, 5:23 p.m. Minibar. 1 bottle of sparkling rose. Room service. Chocolate-dipped strawberries for 2. Note. Do not disturb celebrating. Celebrating? I leaned against the desk, feeling like my knees were giving out beneath me. I tried to picture it. Her, wearing that smile, maybe in that green dress she never wears for me anymore, sitting cross-legged on this very bed, feeding strawberries to someone who probably didn't know or didn't care that she was married. To me. Still married to me. It was at that moment I noticed something else. A tiny silver earring on the floor near the armchair. Hers. No doubt. I had bought those earrings for her birthday 3 years ago. She claimed she lost one on a trip to her sister's. Guess that was a lie too. I stood there in that soulless hotel room, holding the earring in one hand and the receipt in the other, wondering who exactly she had become. Or maybe she had always been this person, and I was just the idiot who gave her the benefit of every doubt. The next part was even lower than I imagined I could go. I went through the hotel's guest Wi-Fi page on my phone and opened the browser history still saved under the room's session. There it was, like a dagger to the stomach. ZacharyJamesFit.com. Instagram.com/Zachary.j.lifts. Trip route to Luna Massage and Spa. She didn't just run into Zachary. She brought him here. Maybe not this exact room, but this floor, this building, this ritual she shared with someone who smiled too widely at our table the night before. I didn't cry. Not there. Not in that place. I drove home in silence. My phone buzzed with a message from her, something that tried to sound casual. Darlene. Hey, you left your jacket at the restaurant. Everything okay? You were acting kinda weird last night. Weird. Weird. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened our joint cloud storage from my laptop the moment I got home. I'd forgotten she had backed up her phone to it months ago and never changed the permissions. A part of me hated myself for digging, but a bigger part already knew what I'd find. There were videos, photos, not of anything graphic. No, she wasn't that careless, but enough. Screenshots of texts with Zachary. Pinned selfies of the two of them in gym mirrors. A boomerang of champagne flutes clinking over that same chocolate-covered strawberry tray. One message stood out. Dated 2 days before our anniversary dinner. Zachary. He doesn't suspect anything, right? Darlene. Elmeo, he's so passive he probably thinks you're just my funny gym friend. I closed the screen. Sat there staring at my reflection in the black monitor. She was right. I didn't suspect. And I was passive. But not anymore. I didn't go to work the next day. I told my boss I had food poisoning, which wasn't a lie. Not really. I was sick. Not from anything I ate, but from everything I'd swallowed down for months. Years, maybe. It was like my body finally caught up with what my heart already knew, that everything I'd built with Darlene, everything I believed was real, had been quietly rotting while I held the damn ladder. She came home that evening like it was any other Tuesday, grocery bags in hand, phone tucked between her shoulder and ear, talking to someone named Cass. She brushed past me in the hallway like I was a coat rack. I don't even think she registered that I was staring straight at her. She dropped the bags on the kitchen island and said, "Did you eat today? You look pale." I didn't answer. I just watched her. Watched how smoothly she played the role. Like she could clock in and out of being a wife without skipping a beat. Later, she tried to sit next to me on the couch and asked if I wanted to watch that mindless dating show we usually half-watched while scrolling on our phones. I said no. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. I just said no. She glanced over, confused, but didn't press. That night, she fell asleep before me. Her body curled toward the wall, the same way it had been for months. I lay there with my eyes open, listening to her breath, wondering if Zachary had ever done the same thing after she passed out next to him. Wondering if she'd ever fallen asleep whispering my name but dreaming of his. By 3 a.m., I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry in front of her. I was going to pull the thread and let the whole thing unravel quietly. And she was going to feel every inch of silence. I started the next morning. I made her coffee, just how she liked it. Vanilla creamer, 1 stevia packet, extra hot. I placed it on the kitchen counter and kissed her forehead before I left for work. She smiled. Not in guilt. Not in gratitude. Just muscle memory. But I wasn't going to work. I drove to the Fairmont again. This time, I spoke to someone different at the front desk and told them I left an item during my last stay. They pulled up the digital records and, by complete accident, printed out an itemized guest access log showing Zachary's name listed on the same floor as hers, with a digital room key used 5 minutes after her check-in time. I now had something with his name on it. Something real. Not just screenshots and suspicion. Back home, I sat down and began printing. Not just the access logs, but every text message, every photo, every comment he'd left under her Instagram selfies with the fake captions like, "My heart belongs to one man, only 2 hearts." I wasn't planning a scene. I was building a mirror, and I was going to hold it right in front of her face. That evening, I suggested we do something we hadn't done in ages, dinner at home, just the two of us. No phones. No distractions. I cooked. I plated. I poured wine. Halfway through the meal, I told her I had a small surprise for her. Something simple. Her face lit up. Like maybe she thought I was about to hand her a spa certificate or tickets to some live show. She even reached across the table to touch my hand, and that contact felt foreign, unfamiliar, like someone else's wife had slipped into her skin. I handed her an envelope. She looked confused for a second, then opened it slowly. The first thing she pulled out was the photo of her and Zachary in the gym mirror. Then the Wi-Fi browser lock. Then the hotel key card. At first, she blinked like she didn't understand what she was holding. Then her face changed. Just slightly. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. I just watched her. And for the first time in months, she couldn't hold my gaze. She tried to say something, Gerald. But the words got stuck. Her eyes darted between the items on the table, trying to decide which one was easiest to lie about. But I had taken away that option. The final thing she pulled out of the envelope was the reservation receipt for room 318, with her name on it. And his. She set it down like it burned. Still, I said nothing. I stood up from the table, cleared my plate, and walked to the sink. She just sat there in silence. Her fork still in her hand, her wine untouched, her lies hanging in the air like smoke in a room with no windows. Let her sit with it. Let her stew in the quiet. Because I wasn't the one on trial anymore. She was. The moment I walked away from that dinner table, something shifted. I didn't feel powerful or vindicated. I didn't feel like I'd gotten my point across. What I felt was emptier than I thought possible, like the part of me that had once fought for our marriage had gone completely still. But Darlene? She was stunned. I could tell that much. I'd never seen her sit in silence like that before, shoulders stiff, breathing shallow, her fingers twitching beside that pile of printed truth. For once, she had nothing to say. And that scared her. She followed me down the hall 10 minutes later. I was sitting on the edge of our bed, my hands locked, staring at the floor. She stood in the doorway like she wasn't sure if she should even be allowed inside. Her voice was low when it finally came out. Where did you get all of that? I didn't answer right away. I just looked up at her, waiting for even the smallest flicker of remorse. I didn't get it. Instead, I got a question. A deflection. Like the issue wasn't that she cheated, the issue was that I caught her. I mean, it's not what it looks like, she said. Zachary's just a friend. I know it looks bad, but you're reading way too much into this. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was insultingly stupid. Do friends check into hotels under fake names? I asked, my voice cracking halfway through. She flinched. I had never raised my voice in our marriage, not even once. But this wasn't raised. This was broken. I don't even know why you went looking for this stuff, she said, her arms folding in that defensive way she always did when she was cornered. If you're that insecure. Oh, don't, I cut in. Don't turn this into something about me. Silence followed. Thick, awful silence. She stepped inside the room and lowered herself onto the opposite corner of the bed like we were strangers negotiating a temporary ceasefire. I didn't plan any of it, she whispered. I swear, Gerald, I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. It just happened? I repeated, stunned. You mean the gym selfies? The hotel reservations? The room service for two? That all just happened. She looked away. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes glassed over. It was only a few times, she muttered, as if that was supposed to soften the blow. I felt something harden inside me. A slow freeze working through my chest, 1 inch at a time. Why him? I asked. Why him, Darlene? She took a breath, then another. Because he made me feel noticed. You've been so distant. So dull. That was the dagger. And she knew it. I stood up and backed away from her like she'd physically struck me. Dull, I repeated under my breath. I cooked for you. I cleaned up after you. I paid for your yoga classes, your supplements, your night creams. I planned every single anniversary. I let you vent about your job, your boss, your sister, your migraines. I sat next to you when your dad was in hospice and didn't leave your side for 3 days. She looked at me then. I mean, really looked. And for a second, her eyes actually softened, like maybe she remembered who I was, or who I had been, before she traded that version of me in for a guy who did bicep curls in mirrors and winked at bartenders. I never said you weren't kind, she said quietly, but I needed more than kind. I turned my back to her. Not to be dramatic, but because I knew if I kept facing her, I'd start crying, and I didn't want to give her that. I don't even know who you are, I whispered. You're my husband, she said, almost like a plea. No, I said. I used to be. That night, she didn't sleep in our bed. I didn't tell her to leave. I didn't slam doors or toss suitcases onto the lawn. She just stayed downstairs. And that was worse than any shouting match. But around 3 a.m., I came down for a glass of water and saw her through the crack in the living room door, sitting on the floor, knees to her chest, reading those printouts again. Over and over. Like she was trying to make the evidence feel less real if she studied it long enough. I went back upstairs without a word. The next morning, she made me breakfast. First time in months. The eggs were overcooked, the toast burnt. She tried to smile through it like we were starting over. I'm going to block him, she said. Delete everything. I swear, Gerald, we can fix this. I didn't touch the food. I didn't touch her hand. I just asked, why now? Her smile faltered. Because I don't want to lose you. But I didn't believe her. I think she just didn't want to lose control. I didn't tell her I had already started gathering everything. I didn't mention the hidden backup files, the email archive I sent to myself, or the quiet, careful screenshots I pulled from her social accounts before she locked them down. I let her think her show of repentance, the burnt breakfast, the blocked number, the teary, we can fix this, routine was working. Because for the first time in years, I didn't want to save us. I wanted out. And I wanted out without her seeing it coming. The idea hit me the day she came into my home office, uninvited, unannounced, and set down a fresh cup of tea with a sugar packet balanced perfectly on the saucer, just like I used to make for her. It was this performative gesture, rehearsed and polished, and it made my skin crawl. Like she was trying to smother guilt with sugar and pretend nothing had happened. Thought you could use a break, she said with a small smile, like she hadn't ripped my guts out barely 48 hours ago. She started making herself visible again, singing in the kitchen, folding laundry loudly, leaving her perfume on my pillow like a scent-marking ritual. I'd walk in and find her casually scrolling through vacation packages on her iPad with hopeful eyes, as if the solution to adultery was a beach in Tulum. But I wasn't planning a trip. I was planning an exit. I called a lawyer that Friday. Her name was Melissa, and she didn't flinch when I explained what I needed. I think she heard the shakiness in my voice, but she stayed firm and calm. You're not weak, she said. You're just tired. And tired men make the best clients because they're done waiting for miracles. We went over everything. The property split, the savings accounts, the small retirement fund I'd been building quietly in a brokerage she didn't know about. I told Melissa I didn't want to destroy Darlene. I just wanted to leave with my dignity intact. She nodded, like she'd heard that before, like most men start out saying that and end up changing their minds. But I meant it. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted peace. Something that hadn't existed in our home for a very long time. That weekend, I started making small moves. I bought a new burner phone, transferred all my personal files to a hidden drive. I even began sleeping with my wallet in the drawer next to the bed, like some survival instinct had finally kicked in. On Sunday night, something strange happened. We were sitting on opposite ends of the couch watching a crime documentary. She suddenly leaned toward me and said, I've been thinking, maybe we should renew our vows. You know, start fresh. That's when I knew for certain she was afraid. Not of losing me, but of losing the version of herself she had crafted through our marriage. The respectable, smiling wife. The one who hosted neighborhood brunches and posted #grateful captions under filtered sunsets. Zachary had been a detour, but I was her stability, her insurance. The mask she wore to convince the world she was better than she really was. I didn't answer her. I simply stood, said I was tired, and went to bed early. Monday morning, I woke up before her and took a walk. I needed air, distance, and noise that didn't belong to her. On my way back, I saw something that stopped me in my tracks, her car, parked 2 blocks away from the house, engine running, and Zachary in the passenger seat. I ducked behind a hedge like a coward, like a husband with no spine left. She wasn't kissing him, but she was crying, hands gesturing, voice raised. From my angle, I could only catch pieces of it through the crack in her window, but I heard her say one thing very clearly. He's starting to act different. I think he knows. Zachary looked annoyed. He ran his hands through his hair like this wasn't what he signed up for. Then he leaned closer and said something I couldn't hear, and she nodded. Not reluctantly, not ashamed, like they were deciding something. I backed away slowly, breath caught in my throat, heart slamming against my ribs like it wanted out of my chest. I wasn't supposed to be there. She wasn't supposed to be meeting him again. And I definitely wasn't supposed to feel like the stranger in a story I thought I was writing. Back home, I went to the basement and opened the storage bin where we kept old photo albums, letters, even the DVD of our wedding ceremony. I pulled it out, stared at our frozen smiles on the cover, and realized she's gone. The woman in that video doesn't exist anymore. Maybe she never did. That night, I began writing something. Not a message. Not a confession. A plan. A simple, emotionless outline of what I'd need to do over the next 2 weeks to vanish from her life as smoothly as I had walked out of that restaurant. But before I could finish, she knocked softly on the doorframe and said something that sent a chill down my back. "I have something I need to tell you," she said. "But I don't know how." I turned to her slowly, unsure of what was about to come out of her mouth. Then she said it. And everything got so much worse. She stepped into the room with her hands locked nervously in front of her, the way she used to do when she was about to admit she dented the car or forgot to pay the gas bill. But this wasn't a dent or a bill. I could tell by the way her voice nearly broke before she even opened her mouth. "I think I'm pregnant." My entire body stopped. No movement. No breath. Just that sentence echoing through me like a punch I hadn't braced for. Pregnant. I stared at her, waiting for her to correct herself, to add something, anything, "It's a scare," or "I'm late," or "I'm not sure yet." But she didn't. She just stood there in the doorway like she had detonated a bomb and now waited to see how far the blast would spread. "I haven't taken a real test," she said quickly, filling the silence like it might cushion the fall. "I'm just late. But it's never been like this before." I didn't speak. I couldn't. My mind was already unraveling timelines, scanning through every recent moment like a desperate accountant balancing emotional ledgers. She noticed the way I froze. Her voice softened. "If it's real, it could still be ours. Gerald, it probably is ours." That word, probably, slammed into my skull like a hammer. It wasn't hesitation. It was a leak in a dam that had already started to burst. I nodded once, more to give my body something to do than because I believed her. She took that as a signal to come closer, to sit on the edge of the desk where I'd been scribbling my exit strategy just an hour earlier. She didn't see the folder behind her, the open USB drive with her name written in plain black ink on the label. "I know I messed up," she said, reaching for my hand. "But if this is happening, maybe it's a sign. Maybe this is how we move forward. Forward. With a child. Possibly his." I pulled my hand back, gently. My chest felt like it was full of needles, and every breath pressed deeper. "Do you want it to be mine?" I asked, and I saw something in her twitch, a brief fracture in the performance. "I do," she said. Too quickly. I nodded again, got up, and walked to the kitchen. I don't even know what I was looking for. I opened the fridge, closed it, turned the faucet on, then off. I was stalling, trying to keep my brain from making the leap I knew it was about to make. Because if there was even a chance it wasn't mine, if there was even a 1% chance that she was carrying his child, then everything I thought I was holding on to had just turned to smoke. I didn't say another word that night. I didn't ask questions. Didn't accuse her. I let her sleep alone while I sat in the guest room staring at the ceiling, trying not to lose what little I had left of myself. But the next morning, I made a decision. Not emotional. Not impulsive. I scheduled a paternity test for myself, preemptively. Just in case. I used a private lab in another city. Cash payment. No trace. I also scheduled a consultation with a therapist. Not for her. For me. Because I realized I had no idea who I was anymore outside of this slow-motion nightmare of a marriage. And before I left for that appointment, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Zachary. He didn't answer the first time, or the second. But on the third try, he picked up. I heard music in the background, loud voices, laughter. "Who is this?" he asked. "This is Gerald," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk." "You know exactly why." There was a pause. Then the music got quieter, like he'd stepped outside. "Look, man, I don't want drama. She told me you two were done." She said. She lied. I cut in. "And if you want to keep this from becoming your nightmare, you'll meet me tomorrow. Noon. Public place." Silence. Then, "Where?" I gave him the name of a park halfway between our neighborhoods. Open enough that he couldn't pull anything, quiet enough that I could look him in the eyes when I asked him the one thing I needed to know. After I hung up, I packed a bag. Not to run. Not yet. But because I couldn't sleep another night under the same roof as someone who might be carrying another man's child, while still calling me honey like it meant something. I drove to a cheap motel near the edge of town. Room 12. Peeling wallpaper. A sea that rattled like it was coughing up dust. But at least the bed was mine. The silence was mine. The space, for the first time in weeks, was mine. I sat down and typed 3 sentences in a document I saved to the cloud under a new name. If the child is mine, I'll be a father. If the child is his, I'll be gone. Either way, she won't see it coming. And then I waited for noon. I showed up early. I always do. Years of being the guy who holds doors, double-checks the locks, confirms appointments twice just to be safe, it sticks. I sat on a weathered bench under the elm trees and stared out across the open grass where a few kids kicked around a soccer ball, completely unaware of how quiet the rest of the world can be when your life is falling apart. Zachary arrived 10 minutes late. Aviator sunglasses, hoodie up, acting like someone in a Netflix drama who thinks he's way cooler than he is. He didn't shake my hand, just stood a few feet away and shoved his hands into his pockets. So he said, "You want to talk?" I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. The square jaw, the gym-built frame, the smug tilt to his shoulders. This was the man my wife had laughed with across from me. This was the man she whispered to at hotels, who maybe now had a deeper claim to her future than I did. "I just want the truth," I said. "No games. No posturing. Just tell me what this has been, and whether it's over." He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, then took off his sunglasses. His eyes were bloodshot. "Man, I don't know what she's told you, but this thing, it wasn't supposed to get messy. She made it sound like you guys were practically done. She said that to you while sleeping in our bed." He winced. "Good. That landed. She's manipulative," he said. "You probably don't want to hear that, but she plays angles. She kept telling me it wasn't serious, that it was mostly for fun, that you were what? Too soft. That you didn't make her feel wanted. That you just went through the motions." That stung more than it should have. Not because I believed her, but because a part of me had suspected she thought that. I just never imagined she'd say it aloud. To him. "And the baby?" I asked quietly. He blinked. "What baby?" I paused. "You didn't know?" He looked genuinely confused, then cursed under his breath. No, man, she didn't say anything about that." "Are you serious?" I nodded. "She told me she's late. She said it's probably mine. But now I'm guessing even she doesn't know." He sat down on the bench across from me. His bravado drained out of him in an instant. "Look," he said, "I'm not here to defend myself. I know I messed up. I didn't think she'd. I thought it was just casual. No strings. I swear." I almost laughed at that. The idea that anything involving a woman like Darlene could ever be casual. She doesn't dabble. She consumes. "You're done with her?" I asked. He nodded. "I was already pulling away before this. She started texting me 10, 15 times a day. Asking weird questions. Sending selfies at 3 a.m. like she was trying to prove something. I got the feeling she wanted more than I could give. I started ignoring her. I closed my eyes. That timeline aligned a little too perfectly with when she started crawling back toward me. The breakfasts. The suggestion to renew vows. The sudden tenderness. It wasn't guilt. It was desperation. "She used you to escape," I said. "And now that the fantasy's falling apart, she's trying to crawl back into her old life before it burns." Zachary nodded again, then stood up. "Whatever happens, I'm out. I'm not gonna fight you. If the baby's mine, I'll do what I have to do. But I want nothing more to do with her, man. You should know that." I believed him. I watched him walk away, his hands stuffed in his pockets, head low, like a guy walking off the field after realizing the game was never really his to win. When I got back to the motel, I found a voicemail from Darlene. Her voice was shaky, brittle, like she'd been crying. "Gerald, I went to the doctor today. I just couldn't wait. I'm pregnant. They confirmed it. I didn't tell them anything about you yet, or him. I want us to talk. Please. Can we just talk? No apology. No ownership. Just a request to talk." I stared at the wall for a long time. I thought about our wedding. About the soft clink of wine glasses the night she laughed at his jokes. About the hotel key card that broke something permanent in me. About the moment she told him I was soft. Maybe she was right. Because I was still sitting there. Still thinking. Still not burning the whole thing to the ground. But then I opened my laptop. I started typing an email to my lawyer. A short one. Subject line. "Execute everything." I clicked send. Then I sat there as the room grew darker, and for the first time in weeks, I let the silence comfort me, because now it was mine. I didn't go home that night. I didn't even pack. The truth is, I'd stopped thinking of that house as home the moment I walked out of that restaurant, the moment her laugh, soft and giddy and meant for someone else, echoed across the table like a slap I pretended not to feel. I stayed in that little motel for 2 more days. I listened to the world go on around me, cars outside, TV murmuring in the room next door, my own breath, finally steady. I didn't answer Darlene's calls. I didn't read her texts. I just disconnected. The lawyer had everything. The documents were in motion. My accounts were locked down. My name was being pulled from things I'd once believed were permanent. The joint credit card was canceled. The second car was re-registered in my name alone. Every reminder of her was being erased, methodically, quietly. There would be no dramatic confrontation, no bags flung on the lawn. I wasn't looking to punish her anymore. I was choosing peace. For the first time in my life. On the 3rd morning, I checked out. As I stepped into the sunlight, the cold air hit my face like a blessing. Not harsh. Cleansing. Before I left town, I made one last stop, the clinic. I wasn't sure if I'd go through with it, but the curiosity had been gnawing at me. I asked for the paternity test results, which had come in earlier than expected. I sat in my car holding the envelope. It felt heavier than it should have. When I finally opened it, my hands trembled a little. Negative. The baby wasn't mine. I don't know how long I sat there staring at that word. Not in shock. Not even in sadness. But in clarity. Something clicked. That dull ache I'd been dragging behind me like a rusted anchor, it let go. Just like that. I drove straight to the notary's office and signed the final authorization to file for divorce. No drawn-out discussions. No pleading. No second-guessing. Just ink on paper and freedom on the other side. She tried calling again that night. Left another voicemail. She was crying now, more frantic than before. I didn't know, Gerald. I didn't think. I thought maybe it was yours. But we can figure this out, please. But I was already gone. 3 months later, I was living in a new apartment across town. Smaller, quieter, overlooking a small park where people walked their dogs and drank coffee under rustling trees. I started seeing a therapist every Tuesday. I stopped apologizing for my silence. I stopped mistaking being kind for being weak. And the strangest part? I started smiling again. Not for someone else. Not to hold a marriage together. Just because it felt good. One weekend I joined a local book club. It was supposed to be a one-time thing, just to get out of the house. But I kept going. And at one of those meetings, I met someone. Her name's Marin. She laughs softly, never over anyone. She asks questions, actually listens, and when I told her I'd been through something messy, she didn't flinch or probe. She just said, "That must have been heavy. But I'm glad you're here now." And you know what? I am. I'm glad I'm here. Because when she laughed at another man across the table, I thought that was the end of me. But it wasn't. It was just the moment I realized I deserved more than to be tolerated. I deserved more than polite silence and cold sheets. I deserved a life. And now, for the first time in forever, I'm living it.